Hello and welcome to another episode of Sermon Braindump. My name is Scott Dalen. I'm an ELCA pastor in Southwest Iowa, and I present these videos every week for a couple different reasons. The first of which is to take my brain out of the more background work over the course of the week and move into the process of writing and preparing the sermon that I'll preach to my congregation for the weekend. That's the first, and the second is just to allow you, the viewer, who have given of your time to come by and listen to me ramble, to gain some different insight into the assigned text for the week. And I want to say thank you to you if you have, whether you are a regular viewer or whether you have just stumbled across this for the first time and wondering, what is this guy talking about? So thank you. This particular Sunday, which is November 10th, 2019, the 22nd Sunday after Pentecost, our gospel lesson comes out of Luke chapter 20, verses 27 through 38. Now, kind of a word of where we are at. We are moving towards the end of the season of Pentecost. Now, Pentecost is the longest season in the church year. It does vary in length just depending on where Easter happens to fall in the spring, and that all has to do with the lunar calendar, which is funky, but that's the way that works too. So actually, Pentecost this year is a little bit shorter because Easter was pretty late this past spring, which is fine. It makes for a shorter season, but we are coming towards the end of it. The final week of Pentecost, which is just 2 weeks away, is Always Christ the King Sunday. That's coming up the last Sunday of November. And then we shift into the 4-week season of Advent, which actually kicks off the new church year. Now, Advent, it kicks off usually either the final Sunday of November or the first one of December, just kind of depending on how the days of the week fall. Date-wise, and this year it kicks off actually December 1st is the first Sunday of Advent, and Advent is of course the new year. Now in this cycle, as we move towards the end of the season of Pentecost, we start getting what I tend to call end timesy texts. When Jesus is talking and teaching about, giving us little glimpses about the end times. And in conversation this week with this particular text, I didn't really pick up on it right away, but as I was talking with a couple of colleagues, I started to realize that, we're seeing that shift even in this passage. We're starting to talk a little bit about what will the end times look like. So we're definitely getting into that sense, and we'll be there here for the next couple of upcoming weeks as well. So just with that note about season and kind of where we're at, let's go ahead and read it and we'll get into it. Again, Luke 20, verses 27 through 38. Some Sadducees, who say that there is no resurrection, came to Jesus and asked him a question. Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, leaving a wife but no children, the man shall marry the widow and raise up children for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first married and died childless, then the second and the third married her, and so in the same way all 7 died childless. Finally the woman also died. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For the 7 had buried her. Jesus said to them, those who belong to this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy of a place in that age and in the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. Indeed, they cannot die anymore, because they are like angels and are children of God, being children of the resurrection. And the fact that the dead are raised, Moses himself showed in the story about the bush, where he speaks of the Lord as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now he is God not of the dead, but of the living, for to him all of them are alive. All right, that's the passage. So this particular encounter we hear in all 3 synoptic gospels. Matthew and Mark feature this one as well. And in a pretty rare instance, all 3 accounts are very, very similar. And you've perhaps picked up on this before if you've seen me talk about it. Mark is thought to be the earliest of the 4 Gospels written, and it's then thought that both Matthew and Luke used Mark as a reference, and that's why we sometimes have some overlap. Well, this time the overlap is very, very significant. Typically there are differences, and the differences between Luke and Matthew and Mark in this case are very minuscule, very, very little. But what's happening? Well, we've got the Sadducees. Now, who are the Sadducees? The Sadducees would be considered a sect of Judaism at the time of Jesus. Oftentimes we hear about the Pharisees, and then we've got the Sadducees. They're religious leaders, or they're a portion of Judaism. And what this is a good reminder for us that just like Christianity has many different denominations that are based on tradition and ritual and understandings and interpretations. Judaism is the same way. Still today, there are many different branches of Judaism, and it was the case in Jesus' day as well. It was not a mono. I don't know. I don't know what word I'm trying to use. It was not just a single. Judaism was not just a single single chunk or a single type. There were branches of Judaism, and that's what we see with the Sadducees. Now, how do they differ from what we know? Well, the Pharisees believed that there was a resurrection. We kind of get glimpses of that in various aspects of the Gospels. The Sadducees deny that there was a resurrection. So this kind of seems to be the idea that you live, you have your time of life, and then when that life is over, that life is over. So there's this disagreement between their understanding and what Jesus is teaching. So that's what we see here. Now, there's a question that kind of comes to mind for me are they trying to trap him? Is this just another attempt to make Jesus look bad? Or is this a scholarly debate? I think about the ways that colleagues and I sit around and we debate things and we talk about things and we have our different interpretations and how do we understand something. Is that the same thing that's happening here? And I got to say, maybe. It's ambiguous. And I don't want to just jump to the conclusion that, they're just trying to trip Jesus up to discredit him. I think there's a real strong possibility that they were just engaging in scholarly debate and trying to understand alternate points of view. But what is interesting is the way they do it. I kind of laugh at it. Like, it's not, they're bringing up this idea or this law that goes all the way back to Moses, as we hear that if a man dies and he's married but has no kids, then his brother should marry the widow and have children in the name of his brother to carry on his brother's name and his brother's bloodline. And so that's the indication for Moses. So then they've got this hypothetical situation. I think they really thought through this. Well, what if there were 7 brothers and they all married the same woman and none of them had any kids and they all died and then she died? In the resurrection, whose wife will she be? And I can almost kind of read between the lines, and Jesus is just kind of giving them side eye, like, guys, leave the parables to me. That's my gig. Just step off with that. But it's this hypothetical situation. And where it kind of really seems to come around or come together is we think about the intention behind it. Like I mentioned, so Moses gave them this instruction as a way that the name, the identity, the family, the line, whatever, of that individual would continue. That was the intention of it. And yet, what we see in the resurrection that Jesus then begins to teach about is that marriage doesn't matter in that case, because what matters is to be claimed by God as a child of God, and we see that in one of the verses. Verse 36, they cannot die anymore. They are like the angels and are children of God, being children of the resurrection. So that identity is the one that really matters. It's not about, we got this indication from Moses so that line, that identity would continue. It's this identity that ultimately is the one that matters. But another thought that kind of comes around as we do think about end times. One of my colleagues said this, and it really kind of stuck with me. It's the Sadducees are asking that question that I think we all ask of what's it going to look like? What's it going to be like in the last days or in the resurrection? What's it going to look like? What I think what she said was, what's the end going to look like? And Jesus is basically saying there is no end. It's just different because the life through God continues. So what's that going to look like? Well, I don't know. We get these little glimpses in Scripture, and I always think that's important, but we don't know, and we have to be okay with that. One day we will know when we have crossed over that barrier, something we talked about a week ago with All Saints, and the witness of those who have gone on before us. Um, so I think about all this, and I want to tie it back into the whole identity as a child of God, and that's very applicable this week. We've got a baptism happening in my congregation, and we profess that the promise of baptism is that God claims us as a beloved child. Now, side note, is the baptism a requirement? No, I don't think it is. Is it very good? Is it important? Absolutely. I don't deny the validity of it. But can God claim whoever God wants to claim? Yes, I fully believe that. And we find that in Mark. Oh, where's it at? Mark 16, Mark 12. Oh, I feel like I should know this, but there's a passage where Jesus says, "The one who believes and baptized will be saved, but the one who does not." Oh God, I'm paraphrasing and I'm killing it. But the one who does not believe, well, I forget exactly. But to me, the belief in the promise is really the key. That and recognizing that God had said that this promise is for all people through Christ, um, and just knowing that that's the case. Do we have to be baptized? No, we don't. Should we? Yes, we should. So hopefully that kind of clears that up. But so that's kind of what's happening in this. There's this conversation, this debate going on, whether it's one-sided or whether it's mutually just jovial. I mean, we don't know, and that's okay. But Jesus says, we have this promise that the old way of thinking about how's this going to work in the end doesn't apply because there is no end, and we have that promise through the claim that God makes upon us in baptism. If you have questions, comments, you want to continue the conversation, go ahead and post those down in the comment section, and we'll do that. Otherwise, I hope you have a blessed week. And as always, if you appreciate these videos and want to support the ministry that allows me to do them, I will put my congregation's website down in the comment section. You can follow the links and support us financially. No stress, no. You don't have to. I'm going to continue doing them. Don't feel that you are being forced to by any means. But if you do, it would be appreciated. Have a great week, everybody. We will catch you next time.